So, I recently stumbled upon an unaired TV sitcom pilot from the 90s that was based on one of my all time favorite movies. And somehow I had no idea it was even a thing that happened until 30 years after the fact. And now I am questioning everything about my pop culture knowledge and expertise. After discovering the said pilot in question, I went down a rabbit hole of awful TV shows attempted by the various networks that was based upon some of the most awesome movies of my childhood and adolescence throughout the late 70s, 80s, and early 90s. A couple of them understandably didn't make it past the unaired pilot stage, but the majority of these awful TV shows based on awesome movies actually got a few episodes made, and some even managed to get an entire season under its belt before being erased from pop culture history. After going down this rabbit hole, I think that what it comes down to is that the success of MASH started a major trend among network executives. They were willing to throw anything at the wall to see what would stick. In fact, there were so many attempted TV shows based on popular movies that I had to split all of this up by decade. And then I had to split it up into two videos. Otherwise, this video would have been like 2 hours long, and I can't demand that kind of time from you in one sitting. So, let's get started with part one because we've got a lot to talk about. We are going to start off with a relic of 1970s television history so forgotten, even the Nielsen family doesn't remember it. The Bad News Bears, the sitcom, because someone at CBS thought, what if we took this raunchy underdog sports comedy and turned it into something the whole family can enjoy by removing all the fun parts? The premise of the show is essentially the same as the movie. Morris Buttermaker, a washed-up pool cleaner and former minor leaguer, gets roped into coaching a ragtag Little League baseball team. In the movie, Buttermaker was played by Walter Matthau and was a beer-guzzling, foul-mouthed anti-hero. But for TV, CBS cleaned up his act so much he probably would have passed a background check to babysit. Played by Jack Warden, this Buttermaker traded booze for root beer, and the insults? Oh, they were still there, but now they were sanitized to things like buttercrud, because nothing screams pure comedy gold like FCC compliance. Then there was Amanda, the Bears' ace pitcher and original stepdaughter in Waiting, who was played by Tatum O'Neal in the movie. For TV, she became Buttermaker's granddaughter. Okay? And as for the kids, their ages were dialed back, probably to appeal to the younger viewers who were supposed to be in bed by 8:30. But hey, CBS did throw us a bone with some future Gen X stars. A young Corey Feldman was on the team alongside Mino Palouse, I think that's how you say it, Billie Jane, and a future daytime drama icon Christophe St. John. Now, let's talk scheduling. If only CBS had done the same. This show bounced around the Saturday night lineup more than a ground ball on a rocky infield. First, it aired at 8 o'clock, then it went to 8:30, and then they brought it back to 8. By the end, viewers had no idea when or where to find it. It's like CBS was playing hide and seek with their own audience. And speaking of hiding, let's not overlook the elephant in the room. This show was doomed from the start. It debuted as a mid-season replacement, the TV equivalent of being called in off the bench during garbage time. 13 episodes aired in the spring of '79, followed by another 13 that fall. CBS then canceled it three episodes into season 2 and dumped the leftovers into summer reruns. By July 1980, the Bears were out of the game for good. But let's not be too harsh. The Bad News Bears sitcom gave us some memorable moments, like Catherine Hicks in one of her earliest roles before becoming the mom on Seventh Heaven. And while it may not have lasted, this was one of the earliest attempts to take part in the growing trend of adapting hit movies into TV shows. Some succeeded, like we talked about earlier with MASH, and some, well, were this. Foul Play was a short-lived series based on the 1978 movie that starred Chevy Chase and Goldie Hawn. The movie was a romantic neo-noir comedy thriller that was an homage to legendary director Alfred Hitchcock, and it was a big hit. But the TV show, despite being based on the film, was a total mess. The San Francisco setting remained, but the lead roles in the TV show went to Barry Bostwick and Deborah Raffin. It was about a bumbling detective and his girlfriend, and it was described in TV Guide as follows. She's a cute, classy librarian. He's a klutzy cop. She lives alone and likes it. He'd like to live alone with her. She likes to be where the action is. He'd like to be the action. When they get together, Watch the sparks fly. Ugh. Unfortunately, the sparks were limited. The series premiered on January 26, 1981, but by the summer of that same year, the show was history. They filmed 10 episodes, but ABC pulled the plug after airing just 6 of them. This show is such a forgotten part of TV history that it was nearly impossible to find anything about it. But I did find one episode on YouTube, along with a couple of network promos. Links are in the description. In 1977, the Logan's Run TV show beamed onto CBS as a spin-off from the cult favorite 1976 film of the same name. The series starred Gregory Harrison as Logan 5, Heather Menzies as Jessica 6, and Randy Powell as Francis 7. It tried to capture the movie's dystopian magic, but ran for only 14 episodes before being canceled faster than you can say carousel. Much like the film, the series followed Logan and Jessica's escape from the city of domes to avoid dying at 30. But here's the twist. Instead of sticking close to the movie's storyline, the show sent them on a nomadic journey across a post-apocalyptic Earth in search of the mythical sanctuary. Their trusty sidekick, REM, no, not the band, an android brilliantly played by Donald Moffat. REM was short for Reflective Entity Mobile, a self-programming, problem-solving android who added a much-needed dose of charm and tech savvy to the team. The show's producers couldn't resist shaking things up. Instead of Logan being a lone renegade, we get a new backstory where the domed city is secretly run by a shadowy cabal of older citizens. These city elders strike a deal with Francis, capture Logan and Jessica, and you'll get to live past 30. Let's talk visuals. The domed city and its infamous carousel ceremony only appeared in the pilot and 2 other episodes, mostly cobbled together from the movie's footage. Budget constraints were so tight that the series couldn't compete with the likes of Star Wars, which hit theaters that same year and redefined sci-fi visuals forever. Logan and Jessica's adventures involved cruising around in a futuristic hovercraft they found in the ruins of Washington, D.C., encountering bizarre societies, rogue robots, and even aliens. Think of it as Star Trek meets Mad Max on a budget. A very, very small budget. The pilot episode had a rocky start. William F. Nolan, co-author of the original Logan's Run novel, wrote the initial script, but CBS demanded reshoots and rewrites, leading to the introduction of the city elders and a complete overhaul of Francis's motivations. The show also saw a revolving door of writers, including sci-fi legends Harlan Ellison and David Gerrold. Gerrold was so dissatisfied with the rewrites of his episodes that he used the pseudonym Noah Ward, a cheeky play on No Award. Heather Menzies later revealed some juicy casting trivia. Dirk Benedict, the future star of Battlestar Galactica and A-Team, and her Sound of Music co-star Nicholas Hammond also auditioned for the role of Logan. Can you imagine Starbuck or Friedrich running around post-apocalyptic Earth? So why did Logan's Run fail? According to Menzies, the show just couldn't match the groundbreaking visuals of Star Wars. Add to that a chaotic production process and constant time slot changes that left audiences confused, and you got a recipe for a one-season wonder. Logan's Run, the TV series, was a bold attempt to expand a beloved sci-fi universe, but it ran out of steam in a galaxy dominated by George Lucas's juggernaut. Still, it's a fascinating relic of 70s television, worth a watch for fans of retro sci-fi or anyone curious about Hollywood's hit-or-miss approach to adapting movies for the small screen. Serpico was a short-lived TV adaptation of the gritty 1973 film that earned Al Pacino an Oscar nomination. Spoiler alert, this show didn't quite live up to its big screen origins. So in 1976, NBC decided, hey, that Serpico movie was amazing, let's make it a weekly TV show. Sounds like a solid idea. After all, who doesn't want to see more of Frank Serpico, the maverick New York City detective who blew the whistle on police corruption and literally took a bullet for it? The series kicked off with the TV movie, Serpico: The Deadly Game, in April of 1976, serving as the pilot. Then the full show premiered in September of that year. It starred David Burney as Frank Serpico, stepping into the massive shoes left by Pacino. And well, let's just say those shoes might have been a size too big. Where's the gritty, intense, Oscar-nominated Frank Serpico we know and love? Oh right, he's not here. What we got instead was a scruffy, undercover detective doing his best TV cop thing. The show was, let's be honest, watered down. The Frank Serpico character, this fearless guy who fought dirty cops and exposed corruption, was turned into a generic undercover detective chasing random bad guys. Think drug dealers, jewel thieves, and the occasional murderer. Why the change? Well, some say the NYPD wasn't exactly thrilled about weekly TV episodes airing out their dirty laundry. It makes sense. They're a real police department in a real city. So to keep things clean, the show shifted away from rogue cops and leaned into standard police drama. Tom Atkins co-starred as Lieutenant Tom Sullivan, Serpico's boss and confidant, and the dynamic was fine, but let's be real, this wasn't Serpico as we knew him. By January of 1977, after just 14 episodes, NBC pulled the plug. One episode was left unaired, and Serpico was replaced by Quincy M.E., a show that actually found its footing. And Serpico, it was never rebroadcast, not in the United States, and not even in France, where it was oddly popular. However, as of the making of this video, there is an entire playlist on YouTube that has all of the Serpico TV episodes because apparently they popped up on TV Land a few decades later. And I put a link to that playlist in the description below. Delta House is the classic example of turning a blockbuster movie into a TV show that no one asked for. The short-lived Delta House was based on the 1978 comedy classic National Lampoon's Animal House, but of course it crashed and burned quickly. Animal House was a raunchy, rebellious masterpiece, beer-soaked frat parties, toga-clad chaos, and the iconic John Belushi as Bluto Blutarski. It was a box office smash and a cultural phenomenon. So naturally, ABC thought, let's tone it down and put it on TV during family hour. What could possibly go wrong? Premiering in January 1979, Delta House tried to capture the irreverent magic of the movie. They even brought back a few original cast members. John Vernon as the perpetually grumpy Dean Wormer, Stephen Furst as the lovable Flounder, Bruce McGill as motorcycle-riding D-Day, and James Widows as the straight-laced Hoover. But one very important character was missing: Bluto. Without Belushi's wild antics, Delta House was like a toga party with no beer, awkward and kinda sad. The show explained his absence by saying Bluto had been expelled and drafted into the army. Instead, they introduced Bluto's younger brother, Jim Blotto Blutarski, played by Josh Mostel. Blotto was fine, I guess, but he wasn't Bluto. Hey, at least we got a young Michelle Pfeiffer as the bombshell, a student who somehow made anthropology look sexy. This was one of her earliest roles, and while the show bombed, Pfeiffer's career skyrocketed. Now, you'd think a frat house sitcom would go all in on the debauchery, right? Wrong. Thanks to network censors and its early 8 p.m. time slot, most of the raunchy humor and risque gags were scrubbed clean. It was Animal House without the animal. And it wasn't just Delta House. NBC and CBS jumped on the bandwagon with their own frat-inspired shows, Brothers and Sisters and Co-Ed Fever. That's right, 3 frat comedies aired at the same time on all 3 networks, but none of them made it past 1 season. The producers of Delta House fought constantly with ABC over content, and despite decent ratings at first, Delta House was canceled after just 13 episodes. Like a frat party shut down by campus police, it ended abruptly and left everyone wondering what could have been. So why did it fail? Some blame the watered-down humor, others point to the stiff competition, and then there's the obvious: nothing can compete with Animal House. And let's be honest, no Belushi, no party. Ultimately, Delta House is a cautionary tale about taking a beloved R-rated comedy and trying to squeeze it into a G-rated sitcom.
I can't sit here while I go nowhere. Chase my dreams to the polluted air.
Stir Crazy was a blockbuster movie starring Gene Wilder and Richard Pryor. And then, brace yourselves, a short-lived, utterly forgettable sitcom. Let's roll the tape on this misadventure. In 1980, Sidney Poitier directed Stir Crazy, a comedy about 2 unlucky guys, played by Wilder and Pryor, framed for a crime they didn't commit. They get slapped with a whopping 125-year prison sentence, and hilarity ensues as they navigate prison life and bond with a colorful cast of inmates. It was a hit, grossing over $100 million and solidifying Wilder and Pryor as one of the greatest comedic duos of their time. So, naturally, CBS thought, hey, people love the movie, let's turn it into a TV show. And in 1985, the Stir Crazy sitcom was born. But of course, it did not share the same success. The TV show starred Larry Riley as Harry Fletcher and Joseph Buzaldo as Skip Harrington. Now, instead of 125 years, the sitcom upped the stakes. 132 years in prison, because why not? They even managed to snag Patti LaBelle for the theme song, but trust me, even Patti couldn't save this one. Now, remember the sadistic warden in the movie, Warden Beatty? He gets reinvented as Captain Betty Phillips, a young, herbaceous prison guard with an attitude, because apparently what this show really needed was a heavy dose of 80s TV cheese. The plot follows Harry and Skip as they escape the chain gang and go on the run, but instead of the gritty comedy of the movie, the sitcom served up watered down hijinks, zany capers, and a constant game of cat and mouse with Captain Betty. If you think that sounds like a recipe for success, well, CBS disagreed. The show was yanked from its primetime slot after just a few weeks of dismal ratings. Just 4 episodes aired. It briefly came back for a handful of episodes in December of '85, but by January of '86, Stir Crazy was officially dead. The biggest issue, none of the magic from the movie made it to the small screen. No Gene Wilder, no Richard Pryor, no Sidney Poitier. Just an uninspired script and a misguided attempt to rehash the movie's charm. The original Private Benjamin movie, which was released in 1980, was absolute gold. Goldie Hawn played Judy Benjamin, a spoiled socialite who joins the army on a whim and, shocker, isn't cut out for military life. It was funny, heartfelt, and gave us a classic fish out of water story. The movie was a smash hit, and it even earned 3 Oscar nominations. Fast forward to 1981, and CBS decided to turn the movie into a sitcom, but they did it without Goldie Hawn. The Private Benjamin TV series did bring back some of the original film's cast, including Eileen Brennan as Captain Doreen Lewis and Hal Williams as Sergeant L.C. Ross. Eileen Brennan was so good, in fact, she won an Emmy and a Golden Globe for her role. But here was the problem. While the movie had sharp humor and heart, the show relied on an omnipresent laugh track to tell you what was funny. The series followed the same basic premise as the movie. Judy Benjamin, now played by Lorna Patterson, is adjusting to army life. She's popular with her fellow recruits, but clashes with her superiors. Most of the humor revolved around her klutzy mistakes and attempts to outwit Captain Lewis, but unlike the movie, which had sharp writing, the show's comedy felt forced and, frankly, exhausting. Things went from bad to worse when Eileen Brennan was hit by a speeding car in late 1982, sidelining her from the show. Polly Holliday, yep, Flo from Alice, was brought in as a temporary replacement, but she appeared in just 2 episodes before CBS decided to cancel the series. The reasons for the TV series' failure were many. Casting Lorna Patterson, who is coming off the comedy classic Airplane, was a huge miss because she just couldn't fill Goldie Hawn's combat boots. When it came to the writing, the jokes felt strained and relied too heavily on slapstick. Then there was the fact that the show went from outdoor filming to standard sitcom style and stages with a laugh track. By the fall of 1982, the concept already felt tired, and Brennan's accident pretty much sealed its fate. So while Private Benjamin the movie is still a beloved classic, the TV show is, well, a forgotten relic. But hey, at least Eileen Brennan got some well-deserved hardware out of it. Next up is the short-lived, totally unnecessary Fast Times TV show, based on the iconic teen comedy Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Now, of course, Fast Times at Ridgemont High is a classic. It's an R-rated, edgy slice of high school life that brought us unforgettable characters like Spicoli, played by Sean Penn, and scenes that are seared into our collective memory. So naturally, network execs wanted to turn it into a family-friendly sitcom. Wow, this was an epic disaster. So much so, I actually had time to break down what went wrong by looking at each of the 7 episodes of this disaster piece. First up, the pilot, directed by Fast Times at Ridgemont High's original director, Amy Heckerling. And you'd think it captured at least some of the movie's charm. Nope. Instead, we get Brad, played by Patrick Dempsey in one of his pre-McDreamy roles, secretly dating Linda because she has a rule against high school boys. Meanwhile, Spicoli, played by a Sean Penn lookalike, tries not to bomb his class presentation while Mr. Hand bets on his failure. Riveting stuff. Ugh. Then in episode 2, The Last Laugh, Mark and Mike, 2 characters who are somehow even duller than their movie counterparts, try to set Mark up with Stacy. Spicoli, meanwhile, gets roped into a plot where the gang bets on whether Mr. Hand can laugh. He does once, and it's weird. Ugh, this is awful. Episode 3, The Engagement, gave us Linda hyping up her mysterious fiance from Chicago who may or may not exist. And then Spicoli spreads a rumor that Mr. Hand lost an eye in World War II. Episode 4 was all melodrama when Brad has an existential crisis after a fast food entrepreneur dies, which somehow derails his lip sync performance at the school talent show. Episode 5, My Brother the Car, had Brad unable to go on a date with Linda because his driver's license was suspended. Episode 6, the writers were phoning it in at this point. Linda gets a new BFF, leaving Stacy jealous. And then in the last episode that aired, Secret Romance, Stacy ghosts everyone to run off with a mystery guy, and Mr. Vargas quits teaching because he's lost his passion. And that, my friends, is how the show ends, with no resolution, no charm, and no real reason to exist. So why did Fast Times crash and burn? Well, for starters, it stripped away everything that made the movie great. The edge, the realism, and let's face it, the R-rated humor. You can't sanitize Fast Times at Ridgemont High and expect it to work as a squeaky clean sitcom. Plus, the cast had zero chemistry. Patrick Dempsey tried his best, but nobody can replace Sean Penn and Spicoli, and don't even get me started on this show's canned laughter. Gung-Ho was a 1986 comedy that gave us Michael Keaton at his charismatic best, tackling cultural clashes in a Japanese-owned car factory. It had laughs, heart, and a surprisingly sharp take on globalization in small-town America. Of course, this story had to be turned into a sitcom, but the Gung-Ho TV show had to be one of the most baffling attempts to cash in on an awesome movie. And trust me when I say that it stalled out faster than an 86 Yugo on a steep hill. The Gung-Ho TV series hit ABC in December of 1986 and mercifully sputtered to a halt by February of 1987. That's right, just 9 episodes. But honestly, that's probably 8 too many. The premise stuck pretty close to the movie. You've got Hunt Stevenson, originally played by Keaton, now swapped out for Scott Bakula pre-Quantum Leap, working as the liaison between the American workers and the Japanese management at Asan Motors in Hadleyville, Pennsylvania. Here's where it gets a little weird. Getty Watanabe, who played a completely different character in the movie, came back as the new plant manager, Kaz Kazuhiro. Props to Getty for trying, but even his comedic chops couldn't salvage this. The series brought back a bunch of actors from the movie too, including Clint Howard, Ronnie Kageyama, and Sab Shimono. But Keaton? Nope. And director Ron Howard? Not a chance. Instead, we got a parade of sitcom tropes and episodes so uninspired they make your average assembly line look like a thrill ride. Here are some highlights, if you want to call them that. In one episode, Hunt uses a company credit card to impress a date, and it backfires. In another, Kaz becomes convinced his wife is cheating on him because her car keeps breaking down. And then there's the one where a beauty contest somehow becomes the solution to a coworker's lack of confidence. It's like they were spinning a wheel of bad sitcom ideas in the writer's room. But the biggest problem, the show completely missed what made the movie work. Gung-Ho, the movie, had bite. It tackled real cultural tensions with humor and heart. The TV show, though, it gave us limp jokes, cliche dialogue, and characters that felt more like stereotypes than people. Sure, it was groundbreaking in one sense, being the first primetime series with a predominantly Asian American cast, but even that milestone couldn't save it from being, well, bad. Starman was a 1986 TV show based on the 1984 cult classic movie. But of course, if it's part of this video, that means the results were terrible. Let's break down what went wrong with this cosmic flop. The Starman movie starred Jeff Bridges as an alien who takes human form, falls in love, and embarks on a touching road trip with Marianne Ravenwood herself, aka Karen Allen. It was a heartwarming blend of sci-fi and romance, directed by John Carpenter no less. Of course this one had to be made into a TV show, totally get it. And it landed on ABC for just one season of 22 episodes. The show picks up 15 years after the movie, and Jeff Bridges was not asked to reprise the role, so that meant our alien hero returned to Earth as a clone of a deceased photojournalist named Paul Forrester, played by Robert Hayes. His mission? Reunite with his now teenage son, Scott Hayden Jr., played by Christopher Daniel Barnes, and search for his long-lost love, Jenny Hayden. It's a touching premise. Father and son on the run from a government agent while bonding and learning what it means to be human, if only the execution had lived up to the potential. One of the coolest parts of the movie was the silver spheres, alien tech that could perform miracles. But the show brought it back. They brought back the concept, but with a downgrade. Instead of 7 spheres that vanished after use, TV Starman got just one that stayed around for multiple uses. Sure, it allowed for telekinesis and telepathy, but the show used it more as a plot device than a meaningful tool. In one episode, Scott accidentally creates a UFO illusion with blue lights. Cool idea, yeah. Properly executed, not so much. And of course, every fugitive needs a pursuer, and Starman gave us George Fox, a government UFO investigator obsessed with capturing Paul and Scott. Fox is convinced they're a threat to humanity, but instead of being menacing, he's, well, kind of bland. In one episode, Paul even saves Fox's life, but that's about as exciting as their dynamic gets. In a 2-part episode, Paul and Scott finally found Jenny Hayden, played by the amazing Aaron Gray, who is now living as an artist under an assumed name. That should have been a big emotional payoff, but instead it felt rushed and anticlimactic. Oh, and the show kept teasing a second season that never came. They even aired an extra episode after that 2-parter, trying to set up new storylines. Unfortunately, the series was canceled before anything could take off. Critics were not kind to TV Starman. With a Metacritic score of 34 out of 100, the reviews ranged from mildly supportive to outright dismissive. The Miami Herald called it warm and funny, but the LA Times wasn't as forgiving, calling it a drag. Here's where things get a little interesting though. Before the cancellation, there were plans to shake up the show's premise. Robert Hayes was ready to leave, so they intended to reveal that the real Paul Forrester survived his helicopter crash, albeit with amnesia. Starman and Scott were supposed to help him regain his memory, that was the plan, and resume his life. It was ambitious, sure, but we'll never know if it could have worked. In the end, Starman the TV series was a case of too much too soon. The movie was a near perfect standalone story, and stretching it into a weekly show was a noble attempt, but it only diluted the movie's magic.
Living life to his own kind of rhythm. It's Uncle Buck.
Did you know there was an Uncle Buck TV show? You didn't? Well, trust me, you're better off. Let's start with some context. Back in 1989, Uncle Buck the movie hit theaters, giving us John Candy in peak form. He played a lovable slob turned babysitter, flipping giant pancakes, driving a car that belonged in a scrapyard, and proving that even gamblers with bad hygiene can have a heart of gold. It was written and directed by John Hughes, the man who practically invented 80s teen angst. And with over $80 million at the box office, Uncle Buck was a smash. So naturally, executives had to milk this cash cow, turn it into a sitcom, and who better to step into John Candy's larger-than-life shoes than stand-up comedian Kevin Meaney. Kevin Meaney was a rising star in the 80s comedy scene, but there was a problem. John Candy's Buck was buffoonish but lovable. Kevin Meaney's Buck was crass, abrasive, and as relatable as a wet sock. But there's so much more to this disaster. The movie's premise was simple. Buck babysits his nieces and nephews for a couple of weeks while their parents handle a family emergency. A great setup for a 2-hour film. But for the TV show? Nah, that's not enough drama. So what did the writers do? They killed off the parents in a car accident. Because nothing says fun, heartwarming sitcom like dead parents. In the very first episode, the kids casually cracked jokes about their parents buying it when their number came up. Yeah, nothing kills the trauma of losing your family quite like sitcom banter. The kids, played by Dave Choden, Jacob Gelman, and Sarah Martinek, I think I got those names right, they acted less like grieving orphans and more like rejects from a bad Disney Channel pilot. Their antics included bratty one-liners, school bullies, and dating drama. It was like the writers completely forgot the whole dead parents thing, and so did the audience. Then there's the comedy, or lack thereof. The Los Angeles Times dubbed it as slobbity, a slob comedy devoid of actual laughs. Kevin Meaney's attempts at humor fell flat. Critics eviscerated it, and the director of the original movie was reportedly so displeased, he disavowed it. Even the critics were savage. Deseret News called it vulgar and tasteless, and CBS somehow stretched this disaster out for 16 episodes. 6 more episodes were filmed but never aired, probably because someone mercifully stepped in and said, enough is enough. And if you think that's the end of this saga, think again. In 2016, Hollywood tried to reboot Uncle Buck with a black cast starring Mike Epps. The result? 8 episodes before it was canceled. At this point, the legacy of Uncle Buck as a TV show is basically a cautionary tale. If it ain't broke, don't reboot it. Sometimes a classic movie is perfect as it is. You don't need to spin it off into a half-baked sitcom. Let John Candy's pancakes and legacy remain unsullied. Okay, so that's the end of part 1 of this video, but there's so much more to come. I have so many more awesome movies from the 80s and 90s that were turned into awful TV shows, including the one that inspired this whole concept. So check back soon for part 2. And like and subscribe, turn on those notifications so you know when the next episode drops. Okay, bye!